We are back. Giants baseball, past, present, and future. I'm Ralph Tyko with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and the host of the show today is Michael Duca. How are you, sir?
We're not doing Dancing with the Stars? Goodness.
Well, that's next.
Dance, Ralph.
That's next. I won't dance. Don't ask me. That's a little...
Yeah, well, I will dance, but only on the radio.
Okay. Well, merci beaucoup. How's that? Let me ask you this, Michael. What you think of the deals made, and more to the point, the deals not made at the trade deadline? And are you welcoming tomorrow's birthday boy, Pablo Sandoval, back to the fold?
Well, that shouldn't take more than an hour.
Okay, we got the time.
Let's see. Deals made. There weren't many. I was kind of surprised that there weren't more deals made at the trade deadline all the way around baseball, but there weren't very many this year. And I think that's a function of, if you want to look for your conspiracy theory there, you only have to look at the standings and realize that the National League is all but decided. I think the only question is Cubs or Brewers at this point.
Right.
And whoever falls out of that pairing falls out of the playoffs entirely. I don't think anybody's going to catch either of the two teams in the West that have looked like they have secured the wild card, I think, ever since back in May. There were not a lot of deals made locally. The A's went through their, typical, everybody else has to spend all of January watching weight loss commercials. The A's roster does theirs always in July. But the Giants made just one deal of any significance at all, and that was trading, essentially, as it turned out, trading Eduardo Nunez for two Red Sox prospects and Pablo Sandoval. It was a swap of third basemen. Nunez has fit right in with the Red Sox and has become an instant contributor with the home run ball, which you would kind of expect with a guy with a little bit of pop in his bat, hitting right-handed in Fenway Park. I'm not sure that the Red Sox have quite figured out what to do with his speed yet, but I have no doubt that they'll find a place or two to use it before the end of the season.
May I ask you, did Nunez not fit in San Francisco? Was it that he replaced Duffy? Not literally, because Duffy was traded, but Nunez was picked up right before that trade, and he was very popular both in the clubhouse and with the fans, was Duffy. And did Nunez suffer from that?
I don't think so. Nunez absolutely loved playing here. He loved being in San Francisco. He loved the fans. He loved the front office. He was extremely happy to be playing for Bruce Bochy. And more than once he expressed an interest in coming back next year. And the team may or may not have an interest in bringing him back next year. He certainly has, if you took a moment yesterday to watch the end of the Cubs game when their fine young catcher, Wilson Contreras, pulled up with what looked like a hamstring pull, it almost looked like Joe Madden went out and just spun the wheel of fortune to figure out where to put people. He moved his second baseman to center field. He moved his right fielder to second base. He was juggling people all over the place because that's the new thing in baseball. When you have Ben Zobrist on your roster, you think that it's a cool idea to have 4 or 5 guys who can play 6 or 7 positions on the field.
Right.
And Nunez is
Ben
one of those guys.
Zobrist era.
Yeah, and Nunez is one of those guys. He can play the outfield. He can play the corner infield positions, and he can play second base.
Right.
So, and he brings the element of speed. and he's going to be somewhere in the vicinity of a 275 to 300 hitter every year. There's absolutely nothing wrong with having a guy like that on your roster, even if you don't see an instantaneous positional fit that he's going to fill on a full-time basis. If he finishes the year with 15 home runs, 40 steals, and hitting 275, that would not have looked bad in left field all year at AT&T this year.
As it turns out, Parker's injury curtailed him and set the team back and kind of set the tone for the year, I think. He's back. How do you see him now?
I think he is in the process right now. I think he's going through one of those streaks where he is able to show everyone 100% of the potential that the team has seen in him and that the team has placed their hopes on. Until proven otherwise, it sure looks like they've found a left fielder for next year.
Nice. Do you think Hunter Pence will be back?
Well, the question is, do you think, Ralph, that there's another team in baseball that will take on $18 or $19 million for him?
He'll be back. That answers that question. This is off the Giants subject.
You're asking about the trades that weren't made, and for the Giants, for the most part, the trades that weren't made because they are right now in that part of the cycle where they are paying people for those 3 championship trophies. They're paying guys who are coming to the end of contracts that they were given in the middle of that run. Pence is one of them. Matt Cain is one of them. I mean, the 2 of them together represent about $36 million worth of payroll. And you pick your poison here. I mean, would you rather have Hunter Pence playing for you for $18 million a year and being the clubhouse presence that he is and the veteran leader that he is for your team, or would you rather be paying $10 million of Hunter Pence's salary to see him come back and wreck you 6 times next year while you have who in right field? I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, we don't know what's coming up, so it sounds like he will indeed be back.
I mean, there are guys out there, and there are guys who are coming up in free agency. Jay Bruce hits a ton in this ballpark. He's one of the few left-handed hitters that doesn't seem to be the least bit bothered by AT&T. And while people in baseball operations that I've talked to are somewhat disdainful of Bruce's defensive capabilities, it turns out that he leads all right fielders in defensive runs saved this year. So, I don't know, maybe that's a function of the ballpark that he was playing in. I say was because Bruce wakes up.
Michael, I'm a Mets fan, and they just dealt him for a bag of balls. Now, and they got him basically on the cheap. Why does he command so little respect in ball? He's going to hit another 30 home runs this year. You mentioned his defense. Statistically, he's a solid ball player. He makes very few mistakes. He takes good angles to balls. Are there players that get, for one reason or another, a bad rap that goes around baseball, kind of like the underground thing? Well, don't sign him for one reason or another. What is it? Why is Jay Bruce we're talking about, have such a low esteem, apparently, in baseball? I'm just curious.
I cannot answer that because I do not know if it in fact exists. There's, there's 2 schools of functionality in baseball. There are teams like the Giants that have a half a dozen people in baseball operations. You got Brian Sabian with 30 years in the big leagues, a lot of experience scouting, former coach himself at the college level. You've got John Barr, whose record as a super scout is absolutely exemplary, almost untouched in baseball. You've got people like Yeshaya Goldfarb and Jeremy Shelley, who are, number crunching analysts, and Bobby Evans, who, his real strength has been in dealing with the contract side of baseball. But there's not a lot of people. There's not a lot of people when you compare it with the modern day baseball operations like the Dodgers are putting on. The Dodgers went underneath their aging stadium about 4 years ago and rebuilt the clubhouses, along with a new luxury entrance to those dugout-level boxes. And the old visitors' clubhouse has now been filled with close to 24 cubicles in which sit shiny, young, wet behind-the-ears mathematical analysts who just sit and grind numbers on players all day long. And what do they find? They find Justin Turner. They find Chris Taylor. These are guys, you think Jay Bruce was gotten on the cheap? Those guys were picked up for zero. No expense. And Justin Turner's going to win the National Batting Championship this year.
Yeah, they're running away with it. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so
injuries notwithstanding, do you see any Achilles heels with the Giants? With the Dodgers that could come and bite them
I do. But before I answer that, I would like to finish answering your previous question. You asked about Jay Bruce. And the difference between...
Pardon me?
You wanted me to answer about Jay Bruce, so I'm going to do that first. The difference between the approaches that those two organizations have may give a clue about people like Jay Bruce. In an organization like the Giants, while there are number crunchers, while analytics are being done by virtually all 30 teams now, teams with old line scouts and old line general managers who've been around for 30, 35 years are going to rely heavily on what's called the eye test. And maybe the best way to describe the eye test is what Billy Beane was talking about in Moneyball when he said, we're not selling jeans here. That's the eye test. You want to know how the guy looks in a uniform. Jay Bruce may not pass the eye test out in the outfield. I don't know. There may be other reasons. And before we go any further, let's call a temporary halt in the festivities while I call you from another phone whose battery isn't running out. I will be right.
Okay, I'm going to push the button and we'll start all over again. We'll consider this a break, and I'm going to put some bumper music in and really make this a production. How about that? So why don't you call back in 5, and thank you very much. We have a terrific show today because the host is terrific, Michael Duca. It's Giants Baseball, past, present, and future, comfortably zoned radio network. We'll be back in a flash. We are back. Michael Duca, part 2 today. Little phone problems rectified. Thank you for calling back, sir. Michael, complete your thought on Jay Bruce, and then I want to play a little game with you.
Well, just to complete the thought on Jay Bruce, you asked why a player who seems to take good routes to the ball and hits 30 home runs every year is not absorbed immediately by other teams when the opportunity comes up. Of course, in this instance, the Indians know that they are renting a player. He is essentially Michael Brantley insurance for them this year as they work their way towards hopefully returning to postseason play. But Bruce is a free agent at the end of the year, and you don't get a whole lot for guys like that. Eduardo Nunez is a free agent at the end of the year. He was exactly what the Red Sox needed, and the Giants got 2 from BAZEBALL in exchange. And
okay, given how little the Mets got, would have they been better off trying to extend him early on in the season when he proved that he could play in New York, which was a question because he really had a lousy half year when they acquired him last year. Should they maybe, and the case could be made for the Giants with Nunez, the same thing, should have they extended those guys earlier on?
I think in the Giants' case, they were hoping for a different kind of year this year, and I think they wanted to see how things played out. They were unable to participate in the international draft lottery, which means when you're unable to participate, it not only means you can't pick people, it also means you don't have slots to trade, which other teams did. The Oakland Athletics traded some international slot money in one of their deals this year, I believe in the Sonny Gray deal. So you lose a big bargaining chip if you are in the luxury tax area too many years in a row. And they have been in the luxury tax neighborhood too many years in a row. So one of the goals of this team was to find ways to introduce new talent that was less expensive. You could say, well, but they traded away Matt Duffy last year, who was very inexpensive. And indeed they did, but, I have not done the research to look it up, Ralph, but I would be shocked if Matt Duffy has played 30 games for Tampa Bay since that trade. He had physical issues when he went. They cropped up almost immediately last year, and they have dogged him all of this year, too. And
right.
Third base is not a position you can play with a wonky Achilles.
All right. Now, are you happy Pablo's back? Do you see
I was skeptical. I figured they had nothing to lose, absolutely nothing to lose. The guy's going to make $170,000 from them this year. They will probably make $170,000 in additional ticket sales as a result of him being there, either from people who want to relive the past or from people who want to boo him for leaving.
And the jerseys and what have you that are being
either
sold.
way, the money spends the same. And then, to top it all off, the guy announces that he gets from the Giants will be going directly back to the Giants Community Fund, which immediately makes him its biggest donor this year.
Oh, that's nice.
So and he's hinted that if he's around next year, he'll be making again the major league minimum next year, $550,000, and he'll do the same thing next year. He's essentially
I must correct you. The major league minimum is $500,000.
I said $550,000. No, I said $550,000.
Oh, did you say 500?
Yeah, it's actually $540,000, but that's
unbelievable.
$1,000 between you and me. That $10,000 between you and me will barely buy beer at a game.
Right. Right. If that doesn't illustrate that it's become a corporate game, then nothing else does.
It has.
Okay.
But in terms of having Sandoval around, I think Bruce Bochy knows his clubhouse better than I know his clubhouse. And Bochy says that the clubhouse needed an injection of energy. It needed somebody who really wanted to be there. And Pablo really wanted to be there. And you can see a difference in this team since he has arrived. They've won 3 series in a row. They took 2 out of 3 from the Diamondbacks. They took 2 out of 3 from the world champion Cubs. And they played good baseball to do it. They looked good out on the field. They looked cohesive. They looked like they believed in themselves. They looked confident. Sandoval had one play where he had to charge in on a ball and make a snap throw, and he threw it over the first baseman's head for an error. But he made a play yesterday to save a run where, he dove to his left, speared a ball, got to his knees, and threw out Ben Zobrist by a half a step. It was a great play. I don't care who was making it, but it was he still got the ability to affect a baseball game. He started a couple of rallies. He's hitting 375. He's started at least 2 run-scoring rallies that I can remember. So, sure, why not? I mean, what the hell else do you have to lose in a season where, your primary goal is don't lose 100?
And stay healthy.
Yeah.
That's a biggie. You see good things happening next year, and then I'm going to ask you a tough question. Do you think it's possible that Bochy and Righetti have ended their managers have a shelf life? Dusty Baker used to talk about that. Is that possible with these two guys, that they might have reached the end? Not that they won't control when the end will be for the rest of their lives, but do you suppose there's that Bell's curve kind of thing goes the other way after a bit?
I think it does. I think Rags has probably proven that with him it doesn't. He's kind of like Leo Mazzoni was. I think Rags is going to have that job until he says, I don't want it anymore. With Boch, I don't think anybody's going to make Boch go find a new address, but it is entirely possible that Boch may say, this is about enough. I mean, I have 3 rings, and I've lost 100 more than once, and I really don't want to risk doing it again. I just, I'm too old to go through this again. I mean, anything like that is possible, but I don't, plus you add up, the cumulative number of procedures that he's had done for his heart. And, at some point you have to think, your grandchildren are more important than some guy playing right field in Richmond.
Absolutely.
So beyond that, though, I don't know. I think this offseason has the potential to be a watershed offseason for the front office. The real question here is, what is the power structure like behind the scenes? We all woke up one morning shocked and stunned to find that Pete Young had been replaced by Bill Newcomb. Then under Bill Newcomb, the team went out and won its first World Series championship, and we were all even further shocked, because this was a guy who was truly, truly beloved by the entire organization, and I don't mean just the ball players. Everybody loved being around Bill Newcomb. Everybody loved working for Bill Newcomb. But for whatever reason, the ownership group didn't seem to like working for Bill Newcomb, and he woke up one morning and found out that he was out and Larry Baer was in. Well, I'm not sure how this offseason is going to go. I'm not sure how much angst is being created amongst the ownership group by the fact that the Giants aren't selling out every night routinely now. Now, when they're not selling out, they're still drawing 38 or 39,000 people, and that's nothing to sneeze at. When you're within 1,000 of a sellout every night, you're not leaving very much on the table.
And the loan is paid too. So,
loan is paid.
They're really skating well now at this point.
Well, everybody in baseball is doing well at this point because the Disney organization exercised their option Monday to purchase the remaining 25% of BAMTech, which BAMTech supposedly is Baseball Advanced Media Technology. What that really is the most capable and most skillful media streaming company in the world. And Disney had owned about half of it. Baseball had owned about 40% of it, and the NHL owned about 10% of it. But they were doing all the streaming for ESPN's online products as well as the NHL's online products in baseball and a number of other entities. Disney held an option, and they spent $1.8 billion with a B, $billion dollars to buy the rest of what was available to them. Baseball still owns 15%, the NHL still owns 10%, Disney owns 75%. And that's $1.8 billion divided by 30. If my math is correct, Ralph, that's a $60 million paycheck for each of the member clubs, which isn't a bad investment on the $2.5 million that they put in 2000. And they still own BAM itself, Baseball Advanced Media, which is what does the websites for all 30 teams and the hugely popular app, Major League Baseball at Bat. Which
absolutely. What a godsend that is, and what an age we live in when I can walk down the street with my cell phone and go to At Bat and listen on my beloved radio to any game being played, home or away, in baseball every frickin' day.
And you have your choice
wonderful.
of which announcers you listen to. You can listen to the home broadcast.
I listen to the Mets,
but
of course, but I have an affinity with Ken Korach. He and I were friends when I was the Topps rep, and he was doing broadcasting for Rohnert Park in the Cal League. This is like 30 years ago. He and I were acquaintances. He's got pipes that are unreal. That's all I can tell you. Of course, John Miller
I
is
can't disagree with you.
type, but Korach is something else. I really enjoy Ken as a human, and so it's like having a friend in my ear, even if I'm not listening to the game intently. Radio baseball is terrific, and we live in an age that couldn't imagine an age like this when we were kids. I remember they came out when the Giants and Dodgers moved to California. The expression "pay television" came into our being, and we pictured people putting quarters in the side of their TV. That's how advanced we were.
That's how it worked at Motel 6.
yeah, right. Exactly. I don't know if that's... the TV probably works that way, too, to say nothing for the vibrators. I'm saving my quarters. I'm going to take a trip someday, Michael. I'm going on a road trip. I'm saving my quarters. All right.
Well, I remember as a kid growing up that there would be pennant races, and you come down to the wire, and the Dodgers were on KFI, which was a 50,000-watt clear channel station. And so once the sun went down and AM radio waves started skipping off the ionosphere, there would be nights when you could pull in Vin Scully even up here, and it was not uncommon if a Giants game ended a few minutes before a Dodger game to hear Lon Simmons listening to Vin Scully and doing his best to recreate what was going on for us. You're right. The access to information and its immediacy now has got us all spoiled to the point that, we'll sit there and watch the at-bat application, and we'll get irritated when we don't see a pitch show up in 15 seconds.
Right. You get updated box scores as you go. Used to stand on the corner and wait for the paper to come out with in New York growing up by the candy store, waiting for the Daily News to come in, and they wouldn't have all the box scores. Tomorrow's Daily News, you'd have to wait to the late editions in the newspapers the next day. This is, it's really decadent as being a baseball fan. That's
well, it is. You know, there are times that I look at it, and you know, the phrase that comes to mind is Lenin talking about religion being the opiate of the masses, and I'm thinking, well, you were close. You were close.
Yeah.
I think fantasy sports is the opiate of the masses.
Are you a fantasy sports player? Do you play fantasy baseball?
I do. I am in one league, and I am the commissioner of that league, and it's been around for 17 or 18 years. And I do one football league, which I'm also the commissioner of. We are, you know, we're a complicated statistical league because I'm a statistical guy, and I want to try and make the decisions in the game as close to reality as possible. So, you know, we don't just tally up stolen bases. You get points for a stolen base. You lose points for a caught stealing. You know, you lose points if, as a pitcher, you go in a game and your team loses. If they like to use you a lot in losing games, you probably shouldn't be on somebody's fantasy team. So, yeah, I do that primarily because it gives me a reason to justify the amount of time I waste going over stats every year.
Okay. You put them to good use. It's not a waste of time at all. Listen, Michael, Ian Kahanowitz, who's a co-host on this show as well, you'll get to meet him. He's an historian. That's the best way of putting it. He's terrific. We kind of did a show or two analyzing Alvin Dark, trying to make heads or tails of the overall Alvin. We did that with Leo DeRocher, but we have with Alvin Dark. There are so many things contributing, so many his religious fanaticism, his craziness over with Cepeda and his point system. Can you tell me your thoughts on Alvin Dark overall he was my boyhood shortstop growing up, following the New York Giants. So I kind of feel for him in a way. He just gets a bad rap overall in the minds of baseball fans that's undeserved. Tell me something about your thoughts about Alvin Dark.
I'll give you three things. First of all, he was a hell of a quarterback.
Yes.
Second of all, he turned
LSU.
He turned out to be one of the nicest guys I ever met when I went to the reunion of the 1954 Giants team in 2004. He and Johnny Antonelli were three just wonderfully pleasant, warm, and funny guys. You know, he's and the third thing is, the very first baseball glove I owned was an Alvin Dark signature model, and it looked a lot like the one in left field at AT&T, except mine had all the fingers. But it was flat as a pancake. It took, I don't think I ever managed to soak it and wrap rubber bands under enough to create a real pocket in it. Yeah. Interesting guy as a player.
So your opinion is tainted. Like I had a Billy Martin glove. I was a Giant fan with a Billy Martin glove, and as a kid. So whenever I think of Billy Martin,
you are a
it's not
conflicted
the same.
young man.
Like, we can't be objective, either of us, about those two guys.
No. I mean, your Billy Martin glove probably It had room for a shot glass, but nonetheless.
Well, and your Dark glove had room for a Bible.
Yeah, I'm sure there was scripture written on the strap on the back. You're right.
And on the inside of his cap, and on his jock strap, and everywhere, anywhere and everywhere.
Yeah, Alvin,
and he wasn't afraid to read it.
No, he was a Southern boy who grew up in the South, who went to LSU, and, you know, the thing that I've learned over the years about cliches, Ralph, is that they're cliches because they're true. People see them all the time, and so they create cliches. There is a reason that part of the country is called the Bible Belt.
Right.
And
same holds true for stereotypical stuff, too. That there's a reason that things are, quote, stereotyped. It may be politically incorrect sometimes, but it's a truism.
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
he's a
more
product
than
of his time.
Correct, it may just be downright wrong.
So many weren't.
True. Yeah.
I can think of Pee Wee Reese, for instance, who grew up in the same region, basically. I mean, the South, and has a better reputation when it comes to race relations.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's the South and there's the Deep South. Louisville, Kentucky is, for all intents and purposes, almost Ohio, Indiana. So,
right.
You know, not that.
But
not
then
that
again, Ohio, Indiana, for all intent and purposes, is Kentucky.
That's absolutely true. My favorite, and I talked to someone from the area just a couple of days ago. My favorite description of the Keystone State is Philadelphia, separated irretrievably by Alabama.
Very well said. We're going to end it on that one, my friend. You couldn't do better. Same time, same bad channel next week, I hope. Michael Duca. This is the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'm Ralph Tyko. What a pleasure it is talking ball with my good friend Michael.
Always a pleasure to be here, Ralph. Thanks. I'm looking forward to next week.
I can't wait. Everybody out there, keep on keeping on. That's what it's about. And we'll see you next week. Adios, everybody.